Your risks so far as biosecurity may be the same with both, or it may be wildly different. It depends on the particular situation. So let's get into this. Now, there are two different types of wild-caught animals that we have to kind of specify. Both are going to come with the same risks when you buy it, but they are a little bit different, I guess you could say. And that's going to be truly wild-caught and farm-raised. A lot of vendors, when they are trying to justify selling the animals to you, if you ask if they are wild-caught, they will try to say that they are farm-raised. But for all intents and purposes, for you, the buyer, it's pretty much the same. Now, all the environmental impacts can be argued. You know, something that's being caught in its natural environment versus something that's actually being raised outside. I guess they've already captured a particular population. They're expanding that population out. But either way, these two different types of wild-caught animals are subject to the exact same viral, bacterial, and fungal issues. They're also subject to the same parasites. I mean, these are all being raised outdoors. So your chances of getting any type of parasites or any type of infections are going to be pretty much exactly the same. And oftentimes when people import these in, there's a mix between these. They're not really differentiated. So again, it's pretty much all the same. Now, again, people are going to ask, well, you know, wasn't everything that's in the hobby now originally wild caught? And yes, it was. It was originally wild caught. Everything was. But the big difference is, you know, if I'm looking as a breeder, as a buyer, as somebody who's experienced in the hobby, if I'm looking for an animal that is not in the hobby currently, well then, yes, my only option is wild caught. But if I'm going to weigh all of the risk factors, if I'm going to weigh, you know, getting a wild caught animal that is likely going to have parasites, could potentially have something, particularly with frogs, ranavirus or chytrid. Now, I mean, chytrid is treatable, but it can spread very quickly and destroy a huge collection. And a lot of people know that at one time I had over 300 tanks of frogs. And to lose that immense of a collection, just to get a new variety of dart frog at a new locality is quite frankly not worth it. But ranavirus. Ranavirus is untreatable at this point. We don't know how to cure it. It is 100% loss. So again, the cost of getting wild-caught animals is not worth it to me. But there are people who like to get these new localities into the hobby, and we really need that. We need that to be able to get these animals established where we can get captive bred populations. Now, when I say that, you know, we also have to specify that there are good importers and there are bad importers. And I would have to say that a lot of importers are bad. Now, I mean, what's the difference? I mean, if you're looking to be someone who is going to be getting all caught imported animals to be able to establish a population of a new locality, then who do you get these animals from? Well, I mean, again, not naming any names, but there are good importers that will actually get these animals in. They will quarantine them, they will test them for various ailments, and they will treat them for parasites and any different ailments they may have. They'll make sure these animals are clean and stable before trying to breed them. Those are good importers. And this is a multi-month process to do this. I mean, we're talking about anywhere from 3 to 6 months to get these animals established, to weed out any that, I mean, quite frankly, are too far gone, because sometimes you have also good exporters and bad exporters. And even if somebody is a good importer, they may accidentally get something from a bad exporter, or they may get a bad export. So anyways, after these animals are, again, tested, treated, they're clean, at that point, they are stable enough that they can enter into the actual hobby itself. And what I mean by that is, if they really wanted to, if they didn't want to just breed these out, they could sell them at this point to any hobbyist off the street, and that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly ethical for them to do that as long as this is saying, of course, it's not destroying the environment, not destroying the native population. Again, there's points that can be argued on that. But again, these are typically animals bought by importers that are going to be established and bred out so that we can have captive bred populations. Now, what's a bad importer? Well, bad importer are the types that will get in a shipment of animals on a Friday at a reptile show and throw the dead ones in the trash, filling up the trash can, and then throw the half-dead ones on the table, obviously full of parasites. There's a cornucopia of diseases that they have. And they're just going to throw those onto regular hobbyists not knowing anything about quarantining animals, testing, treating animals. And more often than not, these animals end up dying on them, and then they just think, oh, well, the habitat was wrong, or, I did something wrong. And meanwhile, those animals were kind of doomed to die, unfortunately. I mean, especially, so here's the thing, these animals can live for a very long time, actually, with parasites. They can live for a relatively long time, even with certain diseases. But the problem is that when you're taking these animals out of the wild, you're cramming them all together into a small space where there's a dense population. Diseases spread very rapidly, and there is so much cross-contamination between these animals that if one frog, for instance, has ranavirus, pretty much all of them are getting it in that shipment. Same thing with chytrid. And when they go through this shipment process, it is such an incredibly stressful process for them to be captured and then put in a tiny container, shipped over several days to somewhere, put in a completely new environment with new types of bacteria and new sets of conditions that their immune system is dramatically impacted. So those parasites that they normally in the wild could have lived for a very long time with, the stress is so immense that those parasites push them over the edge and eventually kill them, essentially. It's just like anything else. If something's already in a weakened state, you stress it the hell out, and it's already not doing good, then you're going to kill it. So again, unethical importers are those that will literally just get stuff in, hawk it on the hobbyists as fast as possible before it dies. That's kind of the goal. They want to die on somebody else, not them, because if it dies on somebody else, they already have their money. They don't lose their money. The thing is, when people import animals, also, if there's anything dead in the shipment, typically the exporter will refund that for that as well. So they're not typically necessarily losing money either. But the goal is to make money. And quite frankly, an importer will always make more than a captive breeder because it's just a quick flip. They're just in it for the money and nothing else. So anyways, if you're somebody going to a reptile show, let's say, or even buying online, if you're buying from a ethical importer, you don't have anything to worry about, just like you don't have anything to worry about with a ethical breeder. But if you're buying from one of these unethical importers, which there are tons of, because it is, quite frankly, pretty easy. If I wanted to, I could start importing animals tomorrow. It's a permitting process, just like with anything else, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to do it. But it's just not an ethical thing to do, in my opinion. I would rather see those animals be imported, tested, treated, quarantined, and then released to the hobby once they're stable to ensure that the customers are getting something that is going to live for them. Not saying it's doomed to die. It's something that's right for the customers. It's something that's right for the animals to make sure that they are in a stable state before releasing them. Now, with that being said, there are also ethical breeders and there are unethical breeders. And so here's the really shocking thing. If you get something that's from a bad breeder, well, your chances of failure are pretty much the same as getting it from a bad importer. I have seen a lot of people that have captive bred their frogs, and they think that's a really big deal. They think that's great. But the thing is, if they have poor biosecurity measures, then, I mean, I hate to say it, but you have the same chances of that animal having a disease and dying from it than you do getting it from an importer. There are companies in this country that unfortunately have led to the massive spread of chytrid, for one thing, and that is through poor biosecurity measures. That is through a massive failure on their part because they have such a huge obligation to make sure that they are going to be putting out healthy captive bred animals, and yet they tend to be spreaders of disease, unfortunately. And it's another thing too. There's a lot of breeders, unfortunately, not a ton, but there are a lot of people that breed animals, usually people that breed a variety of animals. They think, oh yeah, I can sell dart frogs too. Dart frogs are easy. And then they'll sell these little tiny pipsqueak dart frogs that are still absorbing their tail, fresh out of water. And the thing is, with dart frogs, when you're captive breeding dart frogs, you have to make sure that those animals are stable before you're passing them on to regular hobbyists, until you're passing them on to regular customer. Now, if it's somebody who is an advanced breeder, an advanced hobbyist, and it's, advanced hobbyist to advanced hobbyist, and they say, you know what, this frog is fresh out of water. I really don't want to pass this on, but, you know exactly what you're doing. You know exactly how to keep this thing alive. Because you know everything about how to keep this animal alive, just like I do, it's okay for you to now have this animal and to raise it up. I mean, that happens every now and then with rare species. But what happens a lot of times with unethical breeders is it's all a numbers game. And they say, well, I could either put, 3 months into this animal or 6 months into this animal and then sell it, or I could put a couple weeks into this animal and sell it, and I can sell it for close to the same amount. Because you have to remember, especially if you're doing this as a business, that the more time, the more input costs you have into an animal, well, the less you're going to make overall. But again, you can't shave ethics for profits. It's not the right thing to do. But I've seen a lot of companies, especially that bring them to reptile shows or that people get them shipped online. Again, you can ask on forums about them. And they will send little, tiny, emaciated froglets, things that are absolutely doomed to die. Now, a lot of people ask, well, how do you know when it's big enough? Or why would you not want a tiny froglet? And the reason for that is stability. In the hobby, typically 3 months of age, from the time that's out of water to the time that you buy it, that is what is considered kind of the line. Now, of course, that line can be pushed a little bit either way, but it also has to do with the size of the animal. So typically we say 3 months just as a placeholder, but of course, if you're somebody that is power feeding those little froglets, you can get them up to size a couple weeks faster. If you're somebody that is lowering your temperatures when you are breeding the tadpoles, and your tadpoles take longer to morph out, but they morph out as giant froglets, then yes, you can shave off a little bit of the time on the other end, on the metamorphosized end. But the thing is, it's all about making sure the animal is stable to be passed on to someone else who's generally a lot less knowledgeable than a breeder. Sometimes they're not. I mean, sometimes there's really dumb breeders out there, honestly, that just got into it, have no idea what they're doing. They just want to make some money off of it and have no clue what they're doing. That's when you also find little froglets that have like spindly leg syndrome, metabolic bone disease in general, and yet they're still passing them off to the general public. And so you have to be very vigilant about this, and this is where you need to check into the reputation of a breeder and stay away from anybody that has a bad reputation. Because again, if you're going to be someone that's going to get your frogs for the first time, and you end up getting these tiny, emaciated froglets that may also be riddled with diseases because of poor biosecurity measures, froglets that may have metabolic bone disease because of improper supplementation, then you're not any better off than if you had just gotten something well caught. In some cases, you're actually worse off because metabolic bone disease and neurological issues from supplementation issues, a lot of times, if it's severe enough, is irreversible. Whereas parasites, again, if you catch them far enough ahead, that is reversible. even chytrid, as awful as it may be, if you know what you are doing and you know how to quarantine that frog and treat that frog for chytrid, it's not the end of the world. Again, as long as you catch it early enough. But so when you're going and looking to buy frogs, this is where the reputation of the person you're buying from makes such a huge difference. And that reputation is established through the sales of many animals over a course of time, and customers being happy with those animals, and people who are established in the hobby also recognizing that that person is someone who is knowledgeable with those animals and is going to give healthy animals to their customers. Again, because if you're somebody who doesn't know anything, look, I've gone to reptile shows and I have seen really amazing breeders that I'm friends with, breeders I would recommend to anyone. And I've seen people that I absolutely would not take their animals for free. Because their animals, I know, just came in on import. I literally saw them throwing away all the dead ones the day before. And I know that I'm probably going to get something that I'm going to have to deal with that's going to take a lot of my time. Oftentimes, that time is worth way more than just spending a little bit more on a captive bred animal. And this is the thing. A lot of people at these reptile shows, unfortunately, they think that a dart frog is a dart frog is a dart frog. A Tinctorius azureus is Tinctorius azureus. But quite frankly, somebody's selling a Tinctorius azureus for $50 and they're a reputable breeder and they're giving you something that is healthy and well established, then that is absolutely worth the price. If the next person over is giving you a deal for $30 for this tiny emaciated froglet that's just going to die on you 99% of the time, then you're just throwing your money away. So do you want to throw $30 away, or do you want to pay $50 and actually get what you want? And then, importers, they'll sell, let's say, for instance, blue jean Pumilio. I mean, those are imported by the thousands. And, sometimes you'll see them for $25 or $50. And people say, oh, I'll just buy this, $50 blue jean Pumilio from this importer instead of spending $125 from a breeder for a froglet. They figure, oh, it's already adult. Oh, it's bigger. I'm getting more for my money. Oh, it's cheaper. I'm saving money. But if it dies on you, you have nothing. And even if you do get that animal, you really do need to test it. And testing is, $25, $30, $35 for a single test. You have to treat that animal for parasites. That also costs money. That's also be another $20, $30, $40 if you do it yourself, if you're not taking it to a vet. And so once you put all those costs together, plus the cost of time to treat that animal, you are vastly better off just getting a captive bred animal from a reputable breeder. And that's the thing. Unfortunately, dart frogs over the years have gained kind of a reputation amongst some people as being difficult to care for, easy to kill. And really, it's not necessarily that, because dart frogs, in my own personal opinion, are one of the easiest animals to care for. They're one of the easiest animals to keep. I mean, you build a vivarium for them, and then all you have to do is feed them every other day, make sure that you dust their food with supplements, mist their tank every other day, or have a misting system. I mean, they're super, super, super easy. Again, doesn't take a rocket scientist to keep them. But the thing is, again, a little bit of knowledge even goes a long way. If you get an animal that is doomed to die, if it dies on you and you have no idea why it died on you, then oftentimes, again, people blame themselves. Or if they go to the store that they bought from and they ask, hey, what happened to this animal? Oftentimes the store, again, if it's somebody who just freshly imported, if it's not a reputable breeder will ask you a lot of questions to try to figure out why it died, right? Somebody else, they're just going to say, oh, well, you killed it. And I'll be honest, sometimes people do kill animals. I mean, I've seen at reptile shows where people have bought frogs and they'll literally take them out, set them on a hot sidewalk while they smoke a cigarette, and it cooks the frog. Or they'll take it and they'll put on a hot dashboard while they drive home in the sunlight. You know, the sunlight is giving off this ionizing radiation, this extremely strong ionizing radiation that is cell destroying. By the way, the sun is not your friend. The sun literally kills you eventually. But, you know, people don't think about these things, and they do kill the animals. So I'm not going to say 100% it's always on the business, because there are instances of complete and utter stupidity that lead to an animal's death on the customer's part. But I will say that in most of the cases where people are getting a sick animal and it's dying on them, it will be blamed on them either by the person that's selling to them or by themselves. And then that person says, oh, I've already wasted this money. This has already been a loss. You know, this is too expensive. This is too hard. I failed the first time, and they just give up. And that's another reason that, unfortunately, unethical breeders and unethical importers are also destroying this hobby. They are literally robbing the hobby of millions of dollars every year, of customers, of new hobbyists that they burn, that they take a little bit of money from. You know, somebody may spend $500 on a setup and get a wild-caught imported frog, and the frog dies. They throw away the setup, and they never buy anything ever again. They say it's too hard. I've been burned once. I'm not going to do this again. That's what a lot of people do. They just give up from the get-go. And then that person who, if they had bought from a reputable breeder, they would have paid $500 for everything, and then they would have been happy with it, and they would have gone a second tank, and a third tank, and a fourth tank, and 20th tank down the road. You know, somebody that would have spent $5,000 or $10,000 in the hobby after that $500, well, all that money is lost to the industry because that person decides to get out of it at the very beginning. And this is the true cost of unethical importers. This is the true cost of unethical breeders that burn customers. They are literally destroying the industry, unfortunately. They are making it very hard for everyone else that actually wants to do this the right way to make money, because they are literally taking money from people, running off with it, and, you know, buying more animals to throw into the meat grinder, essentially. And these customers are getting out of it from the get-go, not spending a dollar more in it. And so, again, this robs us of millions of dollars every year. It stunts the growth of the industry. And this is why it's also important, too, that if you do see unethical practices, that you ever do see anybody that is doing anything like this, that, you do your best to say something about it. You do your best to complain to a show promoter about it. You do your best to leave a bad review. And I'm not a type of person that necessarily is going to encourage bad reviews for everything. You know, if you have a bad experience, and let me tell you this, even good breeders sometimes mess up. Even good breeders make mistakes. But the difference between them and somebody else is that they're going to do their damnedest to make sure that they make it up to you. They're going to do their best to try to correct the situation. So think about that. Think about, do I want to support somebody that supports me? Do I want to support somebody that is trying to do the right thing? Or do I want to support somebody that is just a mercenary and wants to take my money and run off with it? And again, when you're leaving reviews, give the person a chance. If it's somebody that, they mess up on something and then they try and make it right with you, they do make it right with you, whether it be a replacement, a refund, credit, something like that, that makes you happy for the most part, that actually puts effort into it. Leave them a good review. Absolutely. Don't punish somebody for trying to make things right. But if it's somebody that basically takes your money, sells you a bad product, a bad pet, and then just says, go F yourself, then yeah, leave them a bad review. Yeah, tell people on forums about it. Because that's really the only way that you're going to warn other people. And the only way that these people are going to ever learn is going to be their pocketbook. That's why it's also very important not to try to rescue the animals, because, I've been guilty of this myself. I really have been in the past, and I stopped myself because I realized that when I was trying to rescue animals for the sake of animals, because I hate to see suffering. I would like to think that everybody else hates to see the suffering of the animals. But when you're rescuing those animals, you're giving them money, they're literally just taking that money and buying more animals to put through the meat grinder. That's a big issue with especially big box pet stores. People try to rescue these animals thinking they're doing them a favor, and then they just use that money literally to buy more animals to put into the meat grinder to suffer. In the end, if people just stopped buying from these people in the first place, then they wouldn't have any money to buy more animals. They wouldn't have any reason to continue buying them. They would go out of business. And in the end, that's actually what's going to save more animals than anything. If people vote with their dollars and put people out of business that are going to be damaging the hobby. And it's the same thing with ethical businesses. If you find an ethical business out there, someone who's actually really trying to do some good, then vote with your dollars. Support them. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode today. We're going to try not to make this too long. Again, we're trying to cut off around 25, 30 minutes or so. But I will look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. All right, take care and have a good day.